encryption technology is always a controlled technology, whereby if a certain algorithm has been developed in the US, they cannot export it to countries like in Iran. Okay? Even when they develop it, even when they're teaching people in the US on various forms of cryptography, if you're from a country that they do not export that technology to, you might be taken out of the class until that lesson is over. You might be denied the knowledge. So that is what we mean by controlled technology. Now, depending on the country's technology export controls, yes, that is what I've said. And by the way, when it comes to, these are just verbose words to kujaza screen. But what we mean by the technology is that when you send an SMS, when a company sells cryptography to a certain country, for example, if the US, they sell cellular technology to Africa, to countries like in Kenya, they always sell something that is very secure enough for you to be private, for your communication to be private amongst each other, but weak enough for them to be able to access it or to interfere with it on demand. Okay? That is the whole purpose of it. So that is what we mean. And when it comes to the technology, and what I'm focusing here is on the encryption part of it. The encryption when it comes to SMS encryption, it records the party's text, as I've said, it keeps logs of your text, your metadata, your communication and the metadata. And the communication metadata is when you communicated, whom you communicated with, and how frequently you communicated. So, is that clear? Now, when they return your text, they can turn it over to the authorities based on court orders. But you remember that countries' legal systems are always dependent on the regime of the day. Okay? So as technology improves, laws can only change. Laws can either get worse or better, but technology always improves with time. So this is an example here of an article from a Texas document in the US where the cellular service provider can maintain your communication, your text communication for 3 to 5 days. As you can see, this is Virgin Mobile. And this is an article that I picked up recently. So that means that by law, they can intercept they have your data, they have your call logs, they have your SMSs. It's only a policy that they have telling you that we'll keep your records for this amount of time. If you have not been subpoenaed to hand over the records to the authorities, then they can delete it. But remember, when it comes to service providers, the funny thing about service providers is that if you have the terms and conditions, I can give you terms and conditions and tell you that this service cannot be shared by anybody else. But that is just a gentleman's agreement, even if it's written. You remember Facebook about Cambridge Analytica? They had a privacy agreement, right? But their data was shared by external parties who could be able to analyze the data. So when it comes to policies, you cannot trust policies that much. That is why when it comes to technologies, you try to resolve things where policies cannot apply, okay? Or where policies fail. And by the way, what I believe is that the law, when it comes to technology, the technology can be absolute or not absolute, but what do I mean? I'm trying to figure out. Okay, this is Safaricom. This is Safaricom's policy on their profile. They can legally keep your data. Okay, that is the agreement. Once you purchase a line from Safaricom and use it, they legally hold your call data phones, your call logs, and your messages. Okay, that is legal. That is a binding agreement between you and Safaricom. Now, you can say that data is private. They are not supposed to share it. But if they decide to share it and they say that they were subpoenaed by legal authorities, what are you going to do? Okay? You cannot do much. So when it comes to technology, the good thing about technology is that where the problem is that if technology fails, if people fail to provide a technical solution, they create a law. Okay? That is why you have, in the religions, we have the Bible with commandments, Quran with Sylvia says, don't do this, don't do that. Isn't it? So you're told that don't do this because there are repercussions. That is a law that is supposed to keep you in check if by default other methods fail, okay? Or the technology fails. So when it comes to SMS security, as you can see, I've described this. I described earlier. It goes from the BTS. The security is from the BTS, which is those antennas. These are repeaters on one the repeaters that you see in your device. That is where that encryption works. Okay, that is where a SIM card encrypts. Beyond that, within the Safaricom network, that text can be plain text. Have you ever seen the stories about SS7 being intercepted, phone calls being intercepted? You've seen cases, isn't it? Now, as you can see, this is a general working description of a Safaricom network. And what I've said is that SMS is generally, or GSM security or encryption, GSM encryption is not end-to-end, okay? End-to-end just means if I'm talking to Baraza, if I'm passing a note between myself and Baraza through somebody here or intermediary, it's only Baraza and I will know the key, okay? How we are going to share our communication. But in Safaricom, if Safaricom is the intermediary, for example, Safaricom is this lady, this is the lady that will decide what secret methods we are going to use. Can you see that? Now that means that she can have access to our communication when she wants. So now the current form of SMS technologies, or the current form of how the GSM works, when you send an SMS, you start by, you create the text, right, from your phone. Then the device, the SIM card, encrypts that SMS using the accession key, and then it sends the encrypted text, the encrypted data, over to the network, okay? And when it's in that network here, that network, the SMS is usually in plain text. They can decide to encrypt it within the network, but since they have the key, it doesn't really matter. Senor, if I have the key to how you guys are communicating, even if I send it as encrypted, I can still decrypt it when I want to. And then once it's sent over the network, other processes work, like checking whether you have credit, checking whether the line is valid and everything else. It sends now an encrypted message from the BTS to Alice. Now Alice, what will happen is that now Alice will decrypt the message, the SIM card, using her session key. Will decrypt the message and retrieve the SMS and then read it. Okay? That's a very generalized example of how the GSM SMS process works. Okay? Now, when it comes to the privacy issues that we've noted, is that, and some of these issues, when I was researching on them, I was one of the people that greatly contributed to my understanding and being able to find some of the challenges and being able to work around some of the challenges is Chris Bascom over there. That guy when you're gonna He's a brilliant guy, and he has helped me a lot. So, as you can see, what I've said is that SMSs are not encrypted. Oh, sorry, what have I done? Let's see. Okay. Now, there's GSM sniffing, and GSM sniffing. During one of the previous AH Africa Hackon presentation, there was one way in which people could be able to sniff the GSM packets, and Gabriel was there, isn't it? I think True there. The person that presented how you could be able to create an interceptor or you can be able to spoof the GSM network was somebody called Jed. That was the first time that I saw. But on various videos, there were examples of how you could be able to sniff the GSM packets, and using 1 terabyte of keys, just 1 terabyte, you could be able to crack any communication anywhere. So if I'm intercepting communication to that BTS, and then I collect enough of that information, and then I try to crack it using 1 TB of keys, I could be able to crack the conversations. And apart from that, there is interception in terms of SSL, isn't it? When you gain access to the internet, when you gain access to the network, and you get the key for that particular network, you can be able to listen to or intercept any communication that is in SSL. Now, assuming the communication is encrypted, the codes are encrypted and the SMS is encrypted, what you can leverage on is the metadata, right? Because the metadata, for example, if I'm looking at these two people, what's your name? Yes. Yes. What, yeah, just, I'm using an example. What's your name? Yes. Speak up loudly. Benson and? Jennifer. Benson and Jennifer. Now, as you can see, okay, assuming this is what is happening, Benson and Jennifer are talking, right? I'm looking at them. I cannot see what they're saying, but I know they're talking, they're communicating, and what time they're communicating, isn't it? And if I follow them, if I watch them remotely, I can be able to build a profile on how long they've been communicating, how frequently they're communicating. And that is the ability of, that is one of the abilities of the GSM providers. They can be able to use specific algorithms or machine learning algorithms or data mining algorithms to build a profile, network profile. And one of the work that was done was by me and my master supervisor back in 2012. We developed an algorithm that could be able to use the GSM data to build a network profile. For example, if I wanted to know who's Baraza's network in terms of who are his colleagues, work colleagues, who does he like hanging out with, who is his family, I can build a profile of that on the data from Safaricom based on the geolocation, his location, and the people he communicates with. There's an algorithm that you can be able to develop, that I developed that was able to do that. And it's a simple one. It's not that difficult, and that was one of the issues that we identified and which acted as the premise for me doing this research. Okay? So, now when it comes to encryption and tunneling, this is now where the solution comes into play. And in encryption and tunneling, there are two things that work. First of all, is the encryption of the SMSs, right? You don't want your SMSs being intercepted. Even if they're intercepted, you don't want them to be legible to the people that are intercepting it, isn't it? That is the first part. The second part is that if I want to communicate with you and I do not want the service providers to know that we are communicating, we need to find a way that we can be able to, for me, I could be able to send a message to you through a caveat channel, and that channel will forward the message to you, and when it comes to the network, you cannot tell. And normally when it comes to tunneling, that is what usually happens, isn't it? See, when you're using VPNs, if you want to visit Facebook, if there is a system admin mahali amekaa hapo Safaricom and they're looking at your internet traffic and using a VPN to visit Facebook, they cannot tell you visit Facebook, isn't it? Now for SMSs, it can work. That same approach can work for SMSs. So that is the first thing in terms of tunneling. Tunneling is just using a different channel to communicate, okay? So that you can prevent interception, or you can prevent analysis. For interception and the access to your data, that is encryption. The solution is encryption to prevent that. But to prevent the analysis of your conversations, you can use tunneling. And it's not that difficult. The solution is not that difficult. I'm going to demonstrate it here. So using SMS, the solution that I've worked on here tries to do that for SMS communication. And this is the first approach, and it does it on 3 steps. The first one is just the encrypted SMSs, and then we send it to you directly, okay? And when it comes to encrypting SMSs and sending to you, yes, the SMS can be intercepted, but it will not be legible. So the first one, you have the SMS, you write your SMS. Then the app that you're using encrypts that SMS. Then it will encrypt, obviously before the SMS is sent by the device, it's supposed to be encrypted using the session key, isn't it? In the previous example, which is sent over to the BTS. Now, these guys, even if they have that SMS that you sent, it's not legible to them because the key that you have, it's only accessible to you and Alice, okay? And I'm going to explain how it works, how the key sharing works, because if you encrypt something, you need to find a way to share keys secretly, isn't it? So the next step, the key, the SMS is sent over to Alice. It is decrypted using the session key for the SIM card, and then now the app will decrypt, will get the SMS, decrypt it, and give the plain text SMS. So from here, anything going here will be encrypted in a way that the GSM provider cannot be able to tell. So the next one is, the next step, or the next way of encrypting it is using now a GSM gateway. For example, if I want to send a message to Baraza, I can send a message with the routing information that forward this message to Baraza to a gateway called, what's her name? Penina, okay? So I send an SMS to Penina with routing information. It's encrypted with Penina's public key. So Penina, using her private key, will decrypt the message and see that there is an encrypted message, but there is route information saying forward this SMS to Baraza. Once it reaches Baraza, what will happen is that Baraza will decrypt the message using his private key, and he'll see that there's a message, but the message says that this is the message and this is the person who sent it. So in the SMS, the default SMS app, the message will appear that has come from Penina. Safaricom knows that the message came from Penina, isn't it? But it's only Baraza's phone, the app that decrypted the message knows that it came from me. Okay? And that is how it works. Now this is the approach. You create the message, you encrypt it, you send it to you will send it to our SMS gateway. And then the text will be forwarded to that SMS gateway. The SMS gateway will decrypt. As you can see, RT just means routing information, okay? To forward it. So once it reaches Baraza, once it reaches this, the SMS gateway, the SMS gateway will take out that information and forward the text, the encrypted text, to Alice. And Alice will receive the text. Alice will decrypt the text, and Alice will know that this text came from Baraza. Okay? And the way this text will be decrypted will be that the message has been encrypted in two ways, has been encapsulated. The first SMS was encrypted using Alice's public key. And then the second encapsulated message that encapsulates the first one for routing encrypts it using this gateway's public key. So that once the message comes to this the gateway, the message will be decrypted by its own private key. And you remember PKI infrastructure ensures that you can be able to send keys, isn't it? For the public-private key encryption. But I'm going to show you how you can be able to improve this message, this working in terms of the direct communication. So once it's sent, it forwards it. If Safaricom wants to analyze the data, Safaricom will only say that Bob sent a message to the gateway. That's it. And they'll see that the message came from the gateway to Alice. But when you analyze, when you use algorithms and refine them a little bit, you can be able to tell, you can be able to create a pattern based on the timing, isn't it? Because if I send it to her, Penina, and Penina sends it to Baraza, every time I send it to Penina and it arrives, and then Penina sends a message to Baraza, you can be able to tell, isn't it? That's one way. Now, there's another solution, which I find a little bit better. So, the other solution is by now sending a message using an online API service like Africa is Talking. So what I'll do is that I'll send a message to Africa is Talking. I'll send a post request using the internet to Africa is Talking. And then Africa is Talking, the command will include for this message. See, obviously Africa is Talking, when you want to send a message to somebody, you give the number, you give the text, isn't it? And you use the API, the username and API key. So once I send it to Africa is Talking using a post, it appears nowhere within the GSM network, right? And then Africa is Talking will send a message to Baraza. And then once the message reaches Baraza, what will happen is that Baraza will decrypt it using his private key And when he extracts the message, he'll see that the message was not really from Africa is Talking, but it was from me. The original sender was me, but it went through Africa is Talking. So the default SMS app will show that the message came from Africa is Talking, but the app that Baraza is using for secure SMSs will show that the message came from me. This is how it works. You create your message, you encrypt it using Baraza's private key, a public key. You send it using a post request to the Cloud API service. The API service sends the message to Baraza using the network. And then once Baraza receives the message, he decrypts it and gets the message. Okay? Now, let me show you how the contract exchange works. Because we have discussed about how the messages are sent, isn't it? But how do you share your contact with each other? This is how it works. Now, this is Alice and this is Bob. They both have the app. And they have the contact. This is how you share your contact. What will happen is that Alice will send Bob her contact, okay? And then once Bob receives a contact, Bob will send Alice his contact. So it's supposed to be deliberate because you're not supposed to. You have WhatsApp and then you receive a message that you join Bitcoin, vitu kama hizo. You've seen those messages, isn't it? And they're irritating. But for using for this app, the contact needs to be deliberate. You need to have that person's contact so that you can be able to communicate. So once you've exchanged the contacts, the next step is that now at this stage, if there's no other exchange, Bob and Alice can communicate using each other's public keys. Because it's just 160 characters. And if it's more than 60, the app can split it into multiple messages. But if it's one message, you can communicate using public keys. And it does work. But at the next level is that Alice can generate a shared private key and initialization vector. And then once they generate the initialization vector and the private key, they encrypt that message. They create a trigger function, okay? There are two types of messages that this app uses. There is the normal SMS and there is the trigger function. The trigger function is an SMS that tells the app, update this contact, or update the key of this contact. So what will happen is that Alice will generate a shared private key and an initialization vector, then encrypts it using Bob's public key, then Alice sends the message to Bob, that trigger function. Once Bob receives it, Bob will decrypt the message using his private key and then extract the message. And the message will say, update Alice contact using this information. So there will be a private key that has been generated. So Bob has received it. But that doesn't end there. Bob needs to confirm that he has received that key, isn't it? So what will happen is that Bob will generate the hash of that key. Once he has generated the hash of that key and the AV, Bob will now will encrypt that will convert that ID as a message and send that message encrypt it using Alice's public key and send that confirmation to Alice. And then once Alice has received that, Alice will see that Bob has shared the hash of the key and IV. And then she'll compare with the hash of the keys and IVs she generated. Okay? She'll generate the hash of the key and of the IV of the contact Bob. Once the hashes match, Alice then will send a confirmation to Bob that yes, I've received an acknowledgement. This is something similar to TCP. Can you see the way TCP works? See, this is something similar to that. And once they sent the acknowledgement back to Alice, now with the back to Bob, Alice, in terms of Alice, what will happen is that Alice will update the contact to the private key has been confirmed, and Bob will update his contact for Alice to the private key has been confirmed. So that is how you can share your secret keys. Now, when it comes to the security matrix, what happens is that in the first procedure, remember we had three options of communication, of security in terms of the encryption. The first one was just plain encryption and sending it directly, right? That was option one. And the second one was sending it using an SMS gateway, and the other one was sending it using an online API. Now the first one, Safaricom cannot read the message, or Airtel, this GSM service provider, cannot read the message. Can you see on these, all these three cases? The second one is that they use public key, they can use public key for communicating. And the third one, the shared private key can only work directly, because the private key should be between you and the the specific contact you're contacting. So, for the public key, you can allow anybody to contact you using the public key. That is how HTTPS works, okay? You give the public your public key, so that when they want to create a session using and create secret keys, they use that public key to encrypt that data and send it to you, and then now you can create that exchange. So this one can only be done in the first option, which is sending it directly, but it is not available in the second and third option. And the sender and receiver is practically obscured. This means that Safaricom cannot be able to tell who was communicating with who. In the first case, Safaricom will know because you are sending the message directly, isn't it? The second one, option 2, Safaricom can know. Okay? This means that Safaricom used some advanced algorithm to identify the patterns. For example, I send a message to her, then she sends it to Baraza. See, if I send several messages, you note that there is a pattern, isn't it? And that one is the first one. The first one is using the pattern. For the first one, it's not necessary. It is known, and this one is supposed to be known. Yes, it's identifiable, and for the second one, is identifiable. But this one, you cannot tell. Why? Because I sent a post request. So there is no origin. Safaricom cannot tell where the SMS originated from. It only knows it originated from Africa is talking. It never saw a message go out from my phone. And the sender and receiver is fully obscured, as you can see. In the first one, it's not fully obscured. The second one is not fully obscured. The third one, it's fully obscured. So, is that okay? Are we clear to there? Or is there any issues? So that I can go to the demo. So that is just an explanation of the grid that, the matrix that I've shown here. And the reason as to why I've shown you this matrix is because, as you can see, when it comes to different solutions, have different benefits and also do exhibit some drawbacks, okay? And your option, the way you decide to use which communication depends on which type of issues you're going to deal with here, okay? Because all of them will be available. So the target users is just anybody who needs an extra form of privacy. And by the way, this one is not actually preventing hacking. It's just enhancing your privacy. So I use a lot, but don't mind it. And this one can work with companies that need to have secret communication that is not interceptable to. For example, in human rights might want to have a communication now to flooding, but once get they intercepted by Safaricom, and then the text is known, isn't it? So if you want to create that extra layer of communication, this is one of the target users. This can apply here. And basically, if you use WhatsApp or Signal, if you use WhatsApp for communicating or Signal, and one of the reasons was privacy in your communication, then this app also can apply. So let's start with the demo. So I'm going to, I have the app here. Let me launch. Now, as you can see, this app, I have the app on this phone and I have the app on this other phone. But this phone already had my contact, okay? But I don't have this phone's contact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that contact, and the apps will generate secret keys that will be used for communication. And I'm going to show you the two ways in which you can communicate. Now, so Okay, let's go to the app. Now, this is the message that has been sent. Okay? And the app does not exist. The contact does not exist. Send you. So what I'll do is I'll just come to this, to my app. No, it's, where is it? Okay, now I'm going to share. What I'm doing here, I'm just sharing my contact, okay? Which is like this. It's a QR code. And then when I scan it, let me now scan it. Come here to apps, add contact, scan to config, and then let me scale this light. Okay, the contact has been added. Can you see? Okay. Now there are SMSs that will be exchanged between the two devices. It has completed the key exchange, the secret key exchange. You remember the process of the secret key exchange? So when I open, actually click up in CDAPA. As you can see, in WhatsApp, you notice WhatsApp when the key is updated, it gives an indication, isn't it? Now let me send a message directly to this number, okay? So what I'll do is that, okay, I don't know if I can add another device using Android Cast. Let me do this. Let me see. Open your window. Okay. And let me scan this device. So, okay, let me, before, what I make a credit kwanza. Okay, let me put credit kwa hizi aibu zingine ndogo ndogo sitakani. Lakini zuri tupate tu once in a while. So let me first load credit kwa eSIM, then send an SMS directly, okay? And then I'll send an SMS using the online proxy. So, by a time, I don't know, I'm checking. Phone number. Okay, you remember this device? This Nexus. Gabi remembers it, true? Yeah. So, now let me do this. Let me scan it. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so let me scan it. Okay, so let me have these windows side by side. Allow that one there and that one there. No, you cannot send it. This is just bells and whistles. Okay, start now. Now, what I'll do, I'll send an SMS directly to this phone, to this number, okay? Let me do this, let me close this, close the app, and leave the message there. So, let me delete everything. So, now let me send an SMS, select a Nexus, What should I type? Anything. Hello world. Okay. So when I click on send, I have 3 options, but I've not added the SMS gateway. I had an online SMS API, which was Africa is talking. I'll show you how to add it. Okay. So I send it. I'll click on send directly as SMS. So it has sent. Can you see that message has come? It says it has sent, isn't it? There's an SMS that has come to this device from my number, isn't it? But when I go to the app, and as you can see, you notice that the SMS is small, it's not large. Okay? If I use the public key, the SMS will be large. So the reason as to why we need to have the private key shared is so that the SMS can be small and fit. Okay? So let's go to the app. And then, where is the app? This one. Okay, let me unlock it. As you can see, the message. Okay? So, let me send it. The final part, okay. I tell you, if it fails, it's you guys. I'll blame you. So, let's do the next step. The next step, I'm going to send it through an online API. Okay? So, click on the message. The second message should be what? Ati? Demo what? And I send it through. I'll send it now through the online API. Sasa. You see where it's coming from? Inasema? Africa is talking, isn't it? It's encrypted. But let's go to the app. App. And then unlock it. Here. So right now Safaricom does not know that I've sent an SMS to their phone. Now, okay, what I did, okay, the app, the way I designed it was that the keys, none of the variables, none of the sensitive parameters are hard-coded. Everything is added dynamically on runtime, okay? So once you add it, if I want to add the key, if I want to add the, as you can see, let me delete part of this. So this is the key, I just change it. You are enough units of Africa is talking. So if I want to change if I want to change the provider, the third-party provider, the third-party API, I just come here, sorry. You just come here. What I've done is selected that, selected settings, and then scan QR. And then you come here to your, let me minimize it, then scan. And then you'll update your online SMS API. So the keys are not stored within they're not hard-coded. So I can have my third-party API, the third-party SMS API as Africa is talking, but as I can have a third-party API as somebody else. In fact, when we are communicating, it's only the sender that can need to have the third-party API. The receiver does not need. Okay? That is the purpose, and that was the reason as to why, the rationale as to why we needed to have that. Now, that being said, let's proceed and finish up. There are several issues that I observed when I was working with these demos, or was working with the app. One of these issues was the message limitation, and you know SMSs are 160 characters, isn't it? So if you write a long SMS that is more than 160 characters, what I had to do was break the SMSs, okay? Break the SMSs into chunks of 160 or below. So, and this one is only dependent on the public key. In the private key, you can have a message as long as possible. But for public key encryption, if you have a longer message, it doesn't encrypt it well. So you need to break it down. And that was what I noticed, especially when it comes to working with this solution. The second one was the public key communication. When it comes to using tunneling, I could not have, for example, I send a message through Paulina. Is it Paulina? Penina. Yeah, Penina. If I send a message through Penina and I use our shared private key, it will not be encrypted because the app will see the message has come from Penina. So finding a way in which the message comes from Penina and then trying to decrypt it using a private key is still a challenge till now. But hopefully, whoever wants to pick it up can work with it and see if they can be able to come up with a solution to that. And the latency, the SMS latency, especially when it comes to using proxies, is dependent on the service provider, the uptime of the service provider. And in this case, as you've noticed, the Africa East token, it doesn't take long, isn't it? It's negligible in some cases. And that is what I've said. And currently, this application works for all Android devices from Android 5 and above. And for the future, going forward, I hope somebody will pick it up and then we'll try to implement it in Kotlin and create for iOS devices.